Hey, so I've been getting a lot of questions on nutrition lately. So a few of you might have noticed I got my precision nutrition level 1 nutrition coach certification a few weeks ago. I posted that, and since then I've been getting a lot of questions related to nutrition, or people are just telling me they're surprised that I know a lot about nutrition, because it's not typical for strength coaches to also do nutrition. So yeah, I've been doing nutrition for a long time. Actually, I first competed in bodybuilding in the year 2000, so that's 25 years ago, and then I competed in bodybuilding for a few years until 2004, which was my last competition. So I did my own nutrition for that, and I got pretty peeled, got pretty shredded, so I learned a lot about nutrition then. That's where I actually got my knowledge, is like 20 years ago, and I kept up with it, right? So I also started a nutrition coaching business in the year 2011, 14 years ago, and that was my first, I guess, start in online coaching. It was a nutrition-based company called Body Upgrade. After a few years, wasn't making a lot of money. I just shut down that company. It started becoming a chore. And then a couple years later, I started doing online coaching again with my new passion, strength coaching, right? So anyway, I know a lot about nutrition. I recently got certified, but it doesn't really increase my knowledge base. I've had this knowledge for a long time. Well, the reason I find it surprising that people react like they're surprised that I know a lot about nutrition. I've actually got pretty shitty genetics, and as a strength athlete, I've never really had gifts. I'm not someone that's very tall or very big. And my success, in strongman, really was due to the fact that I'm smart. I knew a lot about training. I did a lot of research about training, programming, and nutrition. My nutrition was on point. Managing my stress was on point. Managing my sleep was on point. Managing my life so I can perform, right? So I was only able to put together, a capable physique and perform well because of all those things put together, right? So there's never strength was never my strength. Raw strength was never the thing for me. I'm not a genetic freak, but when you kind of line up all those things, it makes it so you can kind of get to the next level, right? Anyway, back to nutrition. So when let's start with the basics. Macronutrients, right? So you guys know there's calories and there's protein, carbs, and fats. So this is covered all over the internet. I'm not teaching you guys anything. I'll explain how I've dealt with strength athletes, how I've kind of tweaked the diet along the years with strength athletes, right? So protein is really kind of the first macronutrient that I want to talk about. It's the most important. It's the one that's related to repair of tissues and recovery and adding new muscle mass. So it's the most important. Pro comes from Greek, means first. So protein is really the essential macronutrient, right? It's the one we hear about the most when we're talking about strength and muscle. We've seen studies, ranging from 0.75 grams to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight being used for, optimal performance in athletes. I played around with having it at 1.5 grams per pound of lean body mass. So I guess we'll just stop there and we'll talk about that for a little bit. A lot of these nutrition stats and grams per pound and calories per pound is really based on full body weight, right? So I've got an issue with that, and I found that it wasn't very effective when I was using someone's body weight. It's not that accurate, right? I prefer lean body mass. So when you have, say, for example, a 300-pound woman that may be high body fat, so let's say 45% body fat, that person may only have 165 pounds of muscle mass or something like that. I'm driving, so I'm not going to do the calculations there. But if you look at a 300-pound bodybuilder that's 10% body fat, that's going to be, 270 pounds of lean body mass, right? So we should never consider just body weight in those equations. If you're looking at pure body weight for both those people, you'd say, okay, well, both of them get, 300 grams of protein, per pound of body weight, and that's not really accurate, So the lady that is overweight would only need, as much protein as she has lean body mass. So let's say that's 165. maybe 1 gram per pound, and the bodybuilder may need 270 grams per pound. Now, I've played around with these different, grams per pounds of lean body mass, and at first I was using 1.5 grams per pound of lean body mass because, I want more protein, figured it's the best approach. And it works really well, but especially when you have a caloric surplus, right? If you have a surplus and then you're kind of jacking up the protein, you're fine. When you start getting to maintenance calories, then if you're putting 1.5 grams of protein, then those calories have to come from somewhere, right? So you're missing out a little bit on the carbs there and the fats. So I've decided to kind of keep the protein static because I want to make sure that it's always there, and I don't really scale it up or down very much. So I'll keep my protein at around, now I've kind of landed on 1.25 grams per pound of lean body mass. I found that's optimal, and this is by tweaking and working with tons of different athletes, because when I'm using 1.5 grams, it's expensive, right? The cost of food has gone up, cost of protein has gone up, it's expensive, and I'm not really seeing many benefits, and there's actually drawbacks, because if I'm using 1.5 grams per pound of lean body mass, then I can't use as many carbs, right? And this starts becoming an issue when we hit maintenance calories, and especially when we're going into deficit. So I train a lot of athletes that are in weight classes, right? So they have to cut down sometimes, lower their body weight, and as we're cutting down, we're lowering their calories, right? So we're lowering their calories, but we don't really touch the protein. But if I have the protein stuck at 1.5 grams, then I don't have a lot of room to maneuver with the carbs, right? So being a bit of a meathead, I'm scared to take the protein down, but I've played around with myself first. I started, okay, I'll move myself to 1.25 grams. You know what? Didn't lose my muscle, worked fine, strength is there. Okay, pretty cool. So now I'm using 1.25 for maintenance and for caloric surplus. And when I get an athlete actually on a cut, I'm dropping it down to 1 gram because I want more carbs. I want a little bit more carbs. I want to keep some carbs in there. I'm creating a deficit with the carbs, but I want to keep more. So I'm having to reduce the protein a little bit. It may seem counterintuitive because I know, back in the past, people would say, oh, well, protein is anti-catabolic. You want to keep the protein up. If you're going on a diet, you need to increase your protein to, retain the muscle mass. I get it, but we're performance athletes, right? So we want to be able to perform. We want some carbs in the diet. Keto diets are not excellent for performance athletes, especially strength athletes. So we want to keep the carbs in. And by keeping the carbs in, they have a protein sparing effect, so it works out pretty well. I haven't had athletes losing muscle on 1 gram of protein and a little bit of extra carbs. That's my preference for the protein. Now, we'll talk about fats second. So the fats, again, kind of stable, like the protein. I like to keep them equal, right? I don't move them along like if they're, bulking or dieting. I don't really change the fats and the protein. I keep that very stable, right? So my athletes know this. So the fats, I used to be a high-fat guy, kind of like the low-carb diets better, more satiating foods. I like fatty foods. They taste good. So I keep my fat around 0.5 grams per pound of lean body mass, right? That's what I was kind of using for my athletes. Talk to bodybuilders, talk to others. I see, they're using a lot less fat, some as low as 0.25 grams per pound of lean body mass, and it's really helping them get shredded, right? So, I'm reconsidered the way I'm looking at things. I tried experimenting, lowering the fats down to 0.25 grams, and I noticed, felt flat, joints started to hurt, and it really wasn't doing it for me. There was something missing, right? So I think 0.5 was too much, 0.25 was too little, so I kind of landed right in the middle. So 0.375 grams per pound of lean body mass is what I've been using for athletes, and it seems to work great. It seems to be dialed in exactly where we need it. And so if you're still paying attention, or if you're still following along, you'll notice my protein is static mostly. I sometimes drop it for large cuts, and my fat is pretty static as well. So what manages the caloric deficit and surplus is the carbs, right? So on a kind of maintenance diet, the carbs stay stable. If I need to get someone to gain weight, or we want some extra surplus calories to help with performance, or peaking for a competition or whatever, we're going to be increasing the carbs. And we want someone to cut, we're going to be lowering the carbs. So carbs are the ones that I dial up and down as needed, right? I don't do that with the 3 macros, only with carbs. pretty easy, pretty simple, pretty clean. It's pretty much it for carbs. I've tried keto diets before. When I was competing in bodybuilding, I really liked them because I like high-fat foods. But there was never any magic to not having carbs present and not having present, like the insulin present, right? So actually there are some drawbacks for performance athletes. So as a bodybuilder, I think you can do it, but you're going to be flat. You're going to have to carb up at some point to be able to show up on stage with full muscles. But for performance athletes, you really need those carbs to fuel your CNS, right? So your CNS primary fuel is carbs, glucose. So you want some carbs, right? And the more the better, really. So there's some times, especially if you're a weight class athlete, you're trying to keep the calories down. There's some times where it's best to be careful with how you time your carbs, right? If you have a limited amount of carbs, what you want to do is you want to keep them around training, right? So you want to have them right before training. You want to have them during training. I'm a big fan of intra-workout nutrition. So my athletes all have like a shake during training that contains carbs, even ones that are dining pretty severely. So yeah, when you have limited carbs, definitely time them around training. Have a little bit more before, after, during. And even for athletes that are not in a caloric deficit, it just makes sense to have more carbs like after training. Your body's more sensitive to it. You've just cleared glycogen, before it's upper regulated, just kind of get the carbs in there at the end, right? So that's it for carbs. As far as calories, I start with estimating, caloric needs for an athlete. I use lean body mass as my predictor. I'm assuming an athlete is training 3-4 times per week, probably 8 hours a week or something like that with no cardio. And I usually start the calories somewhere around 17 times their pounds in lean body mass. That's how I kind of start the calories for an athlete. And from there, I have them weigh in on a weekly basis. As they weigh in, I'm able to see if their weight is going up or down. I usually try to start them on maintenance. And then based on how much weight they lose and gain, that's kind of where I start increasing or lowering calories, right? So protein is static, fat is static, carbs are the ones that are dialed up or down. And that's it for calories.